Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, is
amazing.
Thousands of copies have been sold across the United States and the world. You can pick up your copy today on Amazon. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Dr. Joe Salustio back here again. And I want to remind you first, ladies and gentlemen, that if you are a listener of this podcast and you have not yet picked up our book that we wrote this past year called Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, you should do that. Why should you do that? Because we took the first 125 college and university presidents that we interviewed on this podcast, and we asked them all the same question: what do you see for the future of higher education? And we took all of their answers and the trends and issues that they deal with, and we put it into a book, which we know you'll love if you love higher ed. So pick that up. It's available on Amazon. And of course, you'll see me and hear me talking about it basically until I die, because I put a lot of work into that sucker. And so did my co-author, Kate Colbert, and contributor, Elvin Freites. We are fast approaching, as I record this, 700 episodes of this podcast in the last 3.5 years. We're hoping it's possible that we will pass 350,000 listens of this podcast. Actually, it's more like 375 that we're going for. 375,000 plays of this podcast by the time this year is over. You honor us with your attention, and you honor us with your time to listen. And we're going to keep pumping out the content. I always joke that Elvin, co-founder of the EdUp Experience, books me out months in advance, and I'm not lying. There's an opening here or there, but typically I'm out like 3 months. And so we're booking in October now. But we have a special guest with us today. Miraculously, there was an opening and he slid right on in there, and he's got a lot to say. And I'm going to bring him to the microphone right now. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is. He is Michael Moe, and he is founder and CEO of GSV. What's going on? How are you, Michael?
It's great to be with you.
It's great to have you here. And gosh, anybody that hasn't been hearing about GSV is probably living under a rock. But we always like to say, start from the beginning for us. What is GSV? First of all, what does GSV stand for? And what does GSV do? And how long you been at this work?
So GSV stands for Global Silicon Valley. It represents a concept that we saw evolving in the world about a decade ago. And that is that the mindset of entrepreneurship and innovation that's made Silicon Valley such a special place was spreading throughout the world. And we want to connect Silicon Valley to this emerging global Silicon Valley. Importantly, what our passion and my passion has been for my whole adult life was identifying and investing in what I call the stars of tomorrow, which are the fastest growing, most innovative companies in the world. And that really was the origin of GSV, which came in the back of us selling a previous firm called Think Equity Partners. And that is a firm that we grew from out of the Merrill Lynch global growth team with my partner, Deborah Quazzo. Started in 2001. We sold it in 2007.
Amazing.
How do you find a passion for this? Like, where does this come from? This passion to connect investors with stars of tomorrow. How did this manifest itself within you to be something that you saw a need for?
Well, coming out of school, I didn't really even know what I was going to do. And just in talking to different, it was a yikes. I thought I was going to go to law school. And basically, a friend of my dad said, have you ever thought about Wall Street? And, at the time I thought the Federal Reserve was an Indian reservation. I knew nothing about Wall Street. And he said, oh, you can make $60,000 your first year. And wouldn't that be great? And I said, gosh, that sounds better than law school. And so I kind of stumbled my way into the investment business and found really through just really working very hard and then getting very excited about these entrepreneurs that were trying to change the world. How could you get to be involved with them? And so initially I was a research analyst and, tried to spot small companies that had big potential. That evolved ultimately to that of a investor with funds that we manage.
There's impact in this, right? But as we get to higher education and we talk about that, one of the consequences from this work that you do is being able to see that the matchmaking, so to speak, creates some type of consequence, some type of impact that you're proud of. Can you look back on your career and point out a couple of those companies that have just done incredible work that maybe you picked out? Did you pick out as a research analyst? Or you picked out when you had some money to invest? Are there any real, I don't know, just from the heart companies that you just go, I remember this one?
Well, I've been fortunate to be involved with a number of companies that grew from being relatively small to being very successful. So the first one that put the mark on the board was Starbucks Coffee, which I happened to be the first research analyst to recommend that company back in 1992 when it went public. And why I'm particularly proud of Starbucks is at the time, which it seems obvious today, with it being, basically everywhere. Then one, it was just Seattle and San Francisco. And most of the people that I talked to initially about it said that's the most ridiculous concept they've ever heard. Went on, and have been involved with a number of companies that I'm very proud of, but we were investors in Facebook, we were investors in Twitter, we were investors in Spotify and Snap and Dropbox and Palantir, a number of companies in the technology space. But what I'm especially excited about, and why I look forward to this conversation with your podcast, is I've been very passionate and focused on the education area for the last 25 years. And so we've been involved with a number of companies that have evolved over time into being successful. And it's particularly satisfying just because of the impact those companies can have to helping people participate in the future, which is really our focus.
I like your style, dude.
I want to talk about higher ed too, because this is what I do for a living. And one of the reasons we started this podcast, besides the point at which we thought higher ed was finally listening to podcasts, which was in 2019, 2020. Before that, it was kind of hard to get traction with this media. Then podcasts started to blow up, and we saw an opening, we took it, and been able to really bring a lot of incredible voices from around the world to this microphone. We started out going, higher ed's in danger, higher ed's failing. And it was, and then the pandemic hit. Even before the pandemic hit, we were having conversations about the business model of higher ed. And then we really started having that conversation. And I think what's happened is over time, we've started to really celebrate some of the brilliance of higher education. And I'm talking about post-secondary higher education, skills and how we continue to become educated. But it has created, over time, and I think the public's declining confidence, and we see that, and it's documented, the public's declining confidence, is this value conversation. What has value? Does a college degree have value? Is it post-secondary education that has value? Should I go to college? Shouldn't I go to college? What's your sense from what you're seeing amongst the investing community, investor community, about what they think about higher ed? Because this community of entrepreneurs and dollars and cents typically moves faster than the bureaucratic institutions of which some of that money tries to serve in different ways. What are the thoughts around higher ed right now, just from a general sense?
Well, first of all, change creates opportunity, problems create opportunity. So the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. When you look at what's going on in the world today, in a global marketplace, a knowledge-based economy, what your education, your knowledge makes a difference, not only for an individual, but for a company, and for that matter, a country. So, intuitively, as you look at where opportunities are created, that's the kind of space where that can exist. Now, in higher education, maybe a bit like healthcare, it's a little more complicated than just, here's an interesting idea and they're going to get the solution to this problem, or they have this offering that's going to create value, because you have to negotiate a number of other kind of factors that exist in the higher education world that investors don't like. I mean, investors don't like, quote unquote friction.
Nailed it.
And there's friction in the higher education market as it relates to investing, but that also creates, a number of different areas that I think are very interesting, very attractive. And I think this is going to be a long-term play. I mean, it's, you're going to go through up, peaks and valleys, but the long-term trend here is your friend. And I think there's going to be some very, very large and significant and important companies that are created in the higher education space.
One of the things that happened recently is we saw the Silicon Valley Bank closure, and one of the thoughts coming out of that is there'd be a lot of money lost in educational technology, and then AI hits, and you're going, okay, wait a second. In the matter of a couple of months, we saw this craziness. All of these investors, who have money in Silicon Valley Bank, where are they putting it? And then all of a sudden, the explosion of AI and all of the tools that are coming about. When you look at the community of dollars, is this an AI world that we're living in now? Is everybody trying to invest in something that is AI based? And is that money moving away from the more traditional type of business, as it were?
Yeah, unquestionably. And, coming back to the Silicon Valley Bank situation, if that would have not been supported or saved, I don't think people would be investing in AI either. I mean, I think that was a potential catastrophe.
Yikes!
Yeah, exactly. Big time yikes. AI, it's such a fascinating area for us because one, AI is not new. It's been going for 70 years. We've been investing in AI for the past decade, including Dreambox Learning, which has evolved to being a very successful education technology business. We were investors in Palantir, as I mentioned before, in a number of AI companies. But all of a sudden, ChatGPT came along, and it basically woke the world up to what the potential was in this area, and effectively a magic trick. So
what the heck is going on?
Yeah, I think we're very, very bullish as it relates to how AI can be incredibly valuable for learners and for instructors and for institutions. And there is definitely a lot of hype around it, but hype for good reasons. I think from an investment opportunity standpoint, it's going to be incredibly important, not just to close your eyes and throw your line out there. It's it's going to be important to figure out really who are the real companies that are going to offer long-term solutions and not just be kind of a interesting novel thing that's going to be effectively wiped away as this movement continues to grow. But back to your point, I think basically just like technology and the internet, you can't talk about an internet business. Basically, if you're not a business that has an internet component, you're not really a business. And I think that's going to be more or less what happens in the AI world as it relates to learning.
As we look at the ASU GSV conference, which is really a convening of technology and higher education together, I know a ton of people that go to that conference. And one of the things I've been thinking about this year, right? Because when you say, AI's been around for 70 years, most people will be like, oh, come on, Michael. No, it's not.
Do I look like I know what a JPEG is?
Right. When you talk about adoption curves and all those things. And so the average person is going, okay, whoa, look at this thing, ChatGPT. I can ask it questions like, what's the weather today? And it's going to tell me. And you forget that Google could, the Google search bar also does the same thing. So how we think AI can be used, how AI will be used in the future, how higher education can implement AI. And then you look at all these companies that are probably taking, I wonder if I'm getting to my question in a really roundabout way, by the way, but I'm wondering if higher education community comes along and we're like, yeah, let's talk about AI. And then these investors are coming over here and these AI companies are giving us these tools that are just blowing our minds. And we have absolutely no idea how to make them practical for a higher education business. And which one do we pick? I mean, it's just, I wonder if this year is going to be a really interesting dynamic. What do you think?
I think it's going to be a very interesting dynamic. I think you're going to see. Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of capital get basically destroyed because the randomness of how you're seeing people invest. I mean, they are excited. When people forget is that venture capitalists are people too, and what a good right. And what you're good people, by the way. Well, we hope to be, but the bottom line is what, gets the person excited at the normal, business person, venture capitalists get excited by the same thing. So they see this kind of generative AI magic trick and it's the gold rush. But again, I think there's going to be a handful of companies that absolutely thrive, and there's going to be a number of companies that don't. Now, again, I think every company, as we talked about just a minute ago, is going to have an AI component of what they do, or I think they're going to be at a significant disadvantage.
I was talking to somebody yesterday. Can't remember who my guest was yesterday. It was just yesterday, and I'm already forgetting. By the way, I also got readers over here. I'm falling apart. We were talking about how in the hiring process, even for employees, and talk about investors and the AI component, how if we're looking at people in the future, if there's like an AI question we should be asking people, have you experimented with AI before? And if you're interviewing somebody and they say no, what does that tell you about curiosity, about staying up to date with technology and all these other things, and do you want to hire somebody that hasn't explored with AI? And you take that into and put that into an institutional setting. And I wonder if that, because, we're having closures where schools are closing, a lot of religiously affiliated institutions, private schools, just closing, for profits. And so there's lots of students out. And you wonder if the AI curiosity will help to separate institutions from sustainable institutions. What do you think about that? Is this I don't want to say it's a golden ticket, but is it a way to help? Is AI a way to help solve our problems in higher ed?
Well, I think it's going to be both friend and foe. And to your point, look at whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's a thing that's going to be there. It's like gravity. It's a thing, and so how you interact with it is going to be very foundational in terms of your relevance as we go forward. Now, the trend of different institutions having trouble and closures that we've seen and so forth, that was going on before people really thought that AI was a thing.
Tell them like it is.
But I think it's going to accelerate that trend for sure. And a lot of this is kind of reimagining what the higher education institution looks like for the future, which I think, by the way, has enormous opportunity, but it's not, just replicating what happened in the past. It has to think about what is this world that, this brave new world that we're going into, and how can technology be a partner to deliver the kind of value that students and the community is going to be looking for to embrace and thrive.
Oh, yeah.
Join the movement to mobilize and revolutionize higher education by picking up your copy of Commencement, the Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education today. This book has been featured in Forbes, NPR, Harvard Business Review, CEO World Magazine, NBC News, CBS News, and Business Insider, among many others. Don't miss out on what today's highest college leaders have to say about the future of higher education. Pick up your copy on Amazon. So I think you're going into the 15th. Is this the upcoming 15th year of the ASU GSV conference?
It is.
Just 15th. Tell me about the evolution of this conference and what it means to GSV, what it means to the higher education community, because it continues to grow, I think, exponentially each year as interest is raised, as people become more curious about technology and how it can help complement or supplement some of the issues that we're having. So talk about what the conference means to you too, after being in the business for so long.
Well, it's very rewarding to see the continued success of the summit as it relates to people connecting to it, because not only the curiosity they have, but it's a platform to connect and to accelerate ideas and to be able to understand kind of where the world's going and why. At least that's our aspiration. You look at the growth of the summit is really corresponded with the growth of the overall education technology industry and the globalization of learning, which is, clearly megatrends that, benefit all of us in terms of those that embrace it. But going back to the very beginning, in 2010, when we partnered with Arizona State University, Michael Crow had this vision of where he was taking ASU, and he had done all these things, but people hadn't really noticed it yet in a major way. And so the idea was that we were going to put a conference on with them and bring a bunch of interesting people to Phoenix, have them see what's going on at Arizona State, and also from Arizona State's standpoint, get connected to a bunch of interesting education technology businesses. So that year, I think we had 300 people show up, 30 education technology companies presented in that year. ASU, I think, had 5 education technology partners at their institution. Today, they have over 200. We had over 7,000 people come to the event last spring. We had 900 education technology companies present, and I think with over 100 companies around 100 countries around the world were represented. So it's really become something that we're quite proud of.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
What's next? What's next for the summit? Growth? Is it fellows? Is it presidential tracks? Is it investor tracks? I mean, what do you do with it to keep upping the game, so to speak?
Well, I believe you get better, you get worse, you don't stay the same. And so we have to think about how we make the conference better and continue to be more relevant. That doesn't mean that it has to be bigger. In fact, I think our current view right now is that the actual event itself is kind of the level that we think is right. But what you're going to see from us is we're going to dramatically expand our virtual representation. We're also going to be looking at, as we've done, have events that are in different geographic locations. So last year we had our first event in India. We had events in China. And so we're looking at how to, from a physical standpoint, expand the community, but also virtually. And again, I think part of the idea here is how we go from a once a year episodic way to get people together to an ongoing conversation, ongoing engaged community. Things like what you're doing with your program, are a great complement to that. And we look forward to how we can, both, support what you're doing and thank you for supporting what we're doing.
Correct. Well, I was going to say the EdUp experience hasn't been there yet, and who knows, maybe there's live recording to come at one of these summits. By the way, and I have to ask, for those of you that are going to potentially watch this later, are you sitting up talking into a microphone, or are you laying down and there's a hanging microphone in front of you? I don't know. Maybe you don't even answer that. We just let you figure it out optically how he's doing this podcast. But I love it because it's a great look for you. I think you're laying down with a hanging mic in front of you.
That's whatever you like to think. That's that's what we're doing.
That's awesome. The summit also reputationally, as you get out there into the higher ed community, has a reputation for being or among the most innovative conferences because of the type of people that you bring together, right? If you're going to a conference, we've podcasted at higher ed technology conferences before, and you're getting the higher ed community and the technology conferences running it, right? Yours is unique in that you have higher education, you have technology companies, you have investors, you have, I don't know, just people that are going for the experience. There isn't anything quite like it. How do you maintain the secret formula while you improve? And what is the secret formula? Is it the investors? Is it the technology companies? Is it the higher ed attendance? Which one of those is the most important?
There's a number of things that we think are part of the sauce, and one of those is we think the magic's in the mix.
By the way, if you want to go off record and just tell me what the secret sauce is, that's fine, because then I'll just I'll write it down and copy you. But no, go ahead.
So this mix of very interested parties, leaders in what they do, but business people, investors, entrepreneurs, educators, philanthropists, government leaders, all who care about our overall vision, which is how to accelerate innovation and education, how to give everybody an equal opportunity to participate in the future of the foundation, which is access to quality education, but not necessarily would be in the same room together. And so we get that unique community mashed up, if you will.
It is
And
a
then
mashup.
and then importantly, what we're looking to do is not be talking about the same things everybody else is talking about, the here and now issues, but trying to look ahead, connect some dots, and provide a window to what the future is, or certainly what the issues of the future may be, and then try to innovate and to figure out what are the solutions that can advance us toward that North Star. And I think that has been the key for us, is particularly as we've gotten larger, is we don't lose that the one, understand the magic really is in the mix, but also to be looking out ahead of the curve and trying to really anticipate where the world's going and why.
100%.
I love the future forward view. As a higher ed administrator myself, we do get caught in the right now view. Enrollment's tough. There's like I talked about at the beginning, there's a lack of confidence in higher ed. So I'm worried about the next cycle. You're hearing about all the technology going around, but internally there's a message of we need to hold students better. We need to enroll more students. And so you start to think about how you balance the solve my problems now so that I can keep my eyes on the future. And so am I asking this question on behalf of the entirety of higher ed? How do we do both? Maybe the answer is relying on others that have experience outside of our higher ed buildings and area to tell us what the future is going to hold, so that we can decide whether we want to be a part of that future. I don't know if I'm answering the question for you, but there's always this balance that we have to maintain, because it's really easy not to see the future right now and go, okay, let me get through today. Right now, I got students that are going crazy, and I got to do this and do that. How do we get that balance?
Yeah, I mean, diversity is really important, and diversity means a lot of different things. But I believe the diversity means you get people that have different type of experiences, different types of views, but are smart and thoughtful. And again, you try to balance these. There is this reality that you need to understand what's going on here and now, and people want to be able to think about that and share ideas and address that. But at the same time, this kind of tension between today and looking out in the future, and balancing that to that delicate dance, is an important way that we hope to be able to add value to that community, because you can be talking about tomorrow, but we have the realities of today. But if all we focus on is the issues of today, we're gonna miss these opportunities of tomorrow. So that really is an important kind of delicate dance that we try to
dance.
Dance.
We choose truth over facts.
That's the way I feel every day, because I'm just like, everything's important. And how do I bring in this tech or that tech? How do I judge? This is the one that gets me all the time, Michael, especially now. How do I judge the future sustainability, financial sustainability of newer AI companies that I might want to bring in for a particular reason, but I don't want to bring in an organization that's going to fail in a year or 2 or 3. I want to bring in a sustainable organization that's going to help me for the next 10 or 15. And AI has proliferated so many options. And how do that's one of the areas I think is, and I'm using myself as an example again, it's like, oh, this is cool. Oh, that's cool. What would I do to make sure that I know that I'm getting a good company that's sustainable? Any tips for me?
Well, what a lot of people do isn't necessarily the way that you could, hit the home run. But what a lot of people do is they look at, who are the big guys, because whether they have the solution today or not, they're going to keep on moving towards being the most relevant. So the Microsofts and the Googles of the world, they're obviously investing a tremendous amount of resources, in this area and have for some time, and only going to do some more so going ahead. That said, where you're going to see the real innovation take place is with the startups and the brilliant entrepreneurs and scientists and so forth that are coming up with these amazing ideas and tools and platforms. And so one, I think the reality is that some of these tools are going to ultimately be acquired and be part of a platform. So that doesn't necessarily mean that your investment of time is going to be wasted, because maybe it's ultimately going to be part of something that's even better for you. But you look at, I think some of the key things is, what is the capital sourcing that's backing these businesses? Because this is not going to be a trivial pursuit in terms of the resources you need, both in terms of talent and capital. And there is sort of a reality of technology economics, which is there's disproportionate gain to the leader in the category. So in this world, because of all the activity, there's going to be a number of people that are able to show some near-term momentum or traction, but ultimately it's going to be, there's going to be a handful of leaders that break out. And so how do you identify them? We have, the formula we use to invest in is, we call it the 5 Ps. Who are the people? What is the product? What's its claim to fame? What makes it special, different, or great? Third P is, potential. But in here, it's really looking at what are the trends that are going on that provide tailwinds of opportunity and let the business continue to evolve. The fourth P is predictability. How, what are the signposts on the highway that show that we're on the right track? And the fifth P is purpose. And why purpose matters is because when you're looking at the great businesses of today, you need to attract great people. And, when you're looking at talent is not just interested where they can make the most money. Talent's interested in where they can have the greatest impact and what the company's doing to make the world a better place. I mean, that's a relatively newer reality, but it's a reality. And so understanding those 5 Ps, I think, give at least as good a indicator as I know of who can be the ones that not only survive, but thrive during their corporate evolution, and the ones that are worth spending time with.
Amazing.
That's a great tip. What were you hoping maybe that I would ask you about GSV today that I didn't ask you, because I'm a mediocre podcast interviewer? But is there anything that you want to say about GSV? Anything coming up, anything going on, releases, anything at all that, open mic. I always like to give our guests an open mic to say whatever they want.
Well, no, I was just looking forward to this conversation. Obviously, you've got a great following and community that you've built. So I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to at least share our thoughts and answer questions that you had. But I think importantly, the people listening just understand that, where we're at GSV is we truly believe that, we can get everything we want if we help enough people get what they want. And so, we have investment funds that are looking to back, entrepreneurs that are trying to change the world for good. We have the conference and actually other events that we put on that are meant to really bring people together. We have publications that we put out. We have a weekly newsletter called EIEIO. And they say, what's EIEIO? I say, well, old McDonald had a farm, EIEIO. Well, new McDonald has a startup, EIEIO. It's about entrepreneurship, innovation, education, creating impact and opportunity.
Nice.
And so, being aware of these things, because we're a little bit different than your typical venture capital firm. We really tried to put together a platform that supports the community, and that's maybe something that people didn't know, and is I think, pretty different than most investment firms.
I love that EIEIO, by the way. I was thinking to myself, that's a pretty unique name. But then when you spit out the acronym so quickly, I got to go back and listen to the recording again so I get it down. What's in that newsletter, by the way? If you, or how do we subscribe to it? Do we just go to gsv.com or?
You can, but it's a free newsletter. I've published it in some form or fashion my whole adult life. Got about 22,000 people get it weekly. And it's only organic, so you got to go up and sign up for it. But that's free. We also put out something called the Big 10. The Big 10 is the 10 articles or videos or research reports or 10 pieces of information that we think are the most relevant for the education space that week. EIEIO, by the way, is broad innovation. So we write about education a lot. We write about the knowledge economy a lot, but we also talk about broad trends in technology and innovation.
Winning.
I love it. I love that you've got so many things going on. Last question for you as we tie this together. And I kind of feel like this is one that you have a crystal ball to answer, maybe more than anybody else. And that is, what do you see for the future of higher education? You know, I got to get some music for this too. I've thought I got to have some like background mystical music going on when I ask this question. But what's in the future for our industry in higher ed?
Well, first of all, I think it is definitely an industry that is going to change and change radically over the next 10 to 20 years. But the opportunities are going to be bigger and better than ever. It's truly going to be a global industry. It already is. It's going to be, I think people, look at it as you go to it for 4 years and then you graduate and you get your degree and maybe come back for some football games. I think this idea of lifelong learning is absolutely, a mega trend. So no longer you're going to fill up your knowledge tank to age 25 and drive off through life. You're going to continually be learning things on an ongoing basis. And it's not just the degree that's going to represent what you know. The higher education institution is so well situated to not just give degrees and not just to have micro credentials, but this ongoing learning and being really a fabric of the community, a fabric of the corporate environment, because learning is going to be everywhere. And there's no, that's what higher education is all about. Getting smart subject matter experts, getting communities together, being able to create courses, being able to create learning experiences. And so reimagining what that could be for the higher education institution is everybody has to be a learner. I mean, how could you be in a better industry? But it's not going to be, it's not going to be, you're going to replicate, fast forward the past to the future. It's going to require some real rethinking of what is, what is the needs and what are the qualifications to fill those needs.
Nailed it.
I'm a little bit of a lie. I said that was my last question, but you made me come up with one more that I want to ask you. You talked about skills, and I meant to ask you this earlier, and then it passed me. One of the things that I feel like higher ed has a problem with, or that post-secondary ed has a issue with right now, is how we put packaging around skills to make it make sense for both the consumer of those skills and the hiring authority, the institution that's making the hiring, that goes, I see they don't have a 4-year degree, but they've got X, Y, and Z. And that makes sense to me in this context, because there are so many ways you can acquire the skills and credentials. And when we bring that packaging together, I think there's going to be an explosion of skills-based education. What do you think about that? Am I off my rocker a little bit, or is there something to that?
No, it's a huge need and opportunity. We call it knowledge as a currency. So the old currency was the degree, and that was what you were able to provide. That was the ticket to opportunity. It's not that the degree is going away, but it's going to be augmented by a variety of different ways that people are able to represent what they know, their capabilities, their skills, and so forth. And we talked about AI earlier. AI absolutely is going to be fundamental to how we're able to do that in a meaningful, accurate way that, there really is a currency to that knowledge.
Yeah, that's the right. Currency is just a good word for it. How do we make it make sense like a currency makes sense so that people get it? Well, I get you, my friend, and I get the great work that you're doing. What an honor it is to have you on this podcast, and wish you all the success in the future, particularly with the conference, because I know so many from higher ed look forward to the summit and what you do for ASU GSV. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, your guest today, he's Michael Moe. He is founder and CEO of Global Silicon Valley, better known as GSV. How did you enjoy your time on the podcast here today, sir?
It was absolutely awesome. I hope you have me back in the future. And if not, I'll see you in San Diego.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I always say this to my guests. You can always come back and co-host with me and interview other people. Now that's where it gets really interesting. And I would tell you now, if you want to get up, you can get up off the ground. We're done recording now.
No.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, you know what I'm going to say. You've just EdUp'd.
Attention.
Forbes called commencement the beginning of a new era in higher education, a dispensable touch point for what's being said in, about, and around higher education now. Don't miss the insights from 125 college and university presidents about what the future of higher education holds. Pick up your copy of Commencement on Amazon today.